Well, some Clemson fans figure that AP and coaches poll is wrong, and that's the only time Clemson's going to be behind Florida State all season. It should be quite interesting when we add it all up. And of course, that's just what the media has to say. What do those people know? We got Jason Priester on the line from allclemsontigers.com to break down those Clemson Tigers. Jason, how's it going?
It's going pretty well, man. How about you?
I am doing just fine. Of course, I am alluding to both the coaches poll and the AP poll, which before I go to the numbers, if nobody out there realizes what the rankings are in the top 10 here, that 13 of the 25 preseason in the AP poll in 2022 finished unranked. So you could throw darts better than that, I think, at a wall, at a map. Can only get 12 out of 25. So let's not get uptight about this, but Clemson is number 9 and Florida State number 8. And we know that Clemson's owned the conference forever, and they've beaten Florida State a zillion times in a row. And so I'm sure somebody took some offense to that.
Going back to the ACC kickoff, the media that covers the ACC actually picked Clemson to win the ACC, Florida State to come in second, and it wasn't that close. It wasn't like a landslide, but it wasn't that close. 8 and 9, I think, feels right for Florida State. Personally, I'd have had it reversed. I'd have had Clemson one spot ahead of Florida State. Because I think Florida State is going to be really good, but I'm not buying that they're a top 5 team like Brett McMurphy. I think he voted on number 4. That's extremely high, in my opinion. They got a lot coming back. Mike Norvell did a lot to address some things in the transfer portal. They've got good players at the skill spots, a very experienced quarterback, Jordan Travis. But there's a lot to like about this Clemson team too, man. You bring in Garrett Riley, you got a brand new quarterback who by all accounts, is just a winner, playmaker. That's going to be an epic matchup come week 4 there in September.
And I'm going to be spending the next 10 days trying to figure out who I'm picking to win this conference because I always take it down to the wire and trying to figure this out. And I should just close my eyes and pick one of them. That's what I should do.
I picked Clemson and Florida State 1-2, so I had to do that back in Charlotte a couple weeks ago.
It makes sense. And certainly, I think this is the conference where I am the most confident that those two teams are going to be in the conference championship game more than any other conference in America. They just seem to be head and shoulders above anybody else. Maybe Pitt's got a shot. Maybe North Carolina or NC State's got a shot to squeeze one of them out. Most likely Florida State, but Florida State, Clemson should be the game twice this year.
Yeah, I think Pitt's kind of a sleeper team to keep an eye on, or at least worth keeping an eye on. I think that defense is going to be really good. They address the quarterback position. I think they are definitely one worth at least watching. I think they're going to be better than some people think.
So, Jason, that was one vote this week. The other vote was in the ACC, and it was a vote to bring in Stanford and Cal, which a year ago would have been like people would have been laughed, out the door for bringing up Stanford and Cal playing in the ACC. But considering the circumstances in college football, nobody pays attention to maps and geography anymore. It's just whatever commodities you can go grab. So, please check out the videos, folks. I've sized up Stanford and Cal and the pluses and minuses, the pros and the cons. And on the surface, it appears as though it was only a 1-vote deal where you need 12 out of 15 with Notre Dame. Everyone who's not aware, Notre Dame gets a full vote as an ACC member. So 12 out of 15 is required to vote in a new member, and they got 11. So it would appear on the surface that with a little politicking that they could push that through, but that may not necessarily be the case.
Yeah, I'm not sure it is. I don't think there was ever an official vote taken. I think they did a lot of talking about it to see if they would have enough yes votes, and there were definitely not enough. Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina State were all against it. If it came right down to it, it wouldn't have shocked me if there wasn't been a couple more schools that were against it. Maybe Virginia Tech, maybe Georgia Tech. I don't know. It was a move that just didn't feel right. I know if you break down the viewership numbers, Cal and Stanford actually have better viewership numbers than more than half of the ACC teams last year, which is unimaginable. It's hard to believe.
And
I
they
couldn't
were
believe it
horrible.
I couldn't believe it when somebody showed me that. But if you're talking about just those two teams, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. You're gonna end up costing yourself money in the long run. They don't do enough to move the needle. Maybe if you do it a year ago and can somehow figure out a way to bring in Oregon and Washington, maybe, and you consider those two teams as add-ons or something. I don't know, but those two by themselves, it just never made a whole lot of sense to me. Clemson, Florida State, especially Florida State, they've been doing it publicly. They've been beating their chest about the revenue gap that's coming and how it needs to be addressed. And adding those two teams absolutely hurts more than helps. I'm sure some of those schools are looking at adding those two schools as a way to maybe cushion the blow when Florida State, Clemson leave. But if you're Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina State, maybe even a couple more schools, you can't worry about that. You gotta worry about right now what's right here in front of you. And that adding those two schools, man, they just don't have the name value, the brand value. Again, it's going to end up costing you money.
Yeah, it seemed pretty obvious the schools that voted one way or the other why they did, Clemson, Florida State in particular, but also North Carolina, that we bring in additional schools, so we've got to share more money, number one. Number two, we're solidifying the ACC and making it more difficult for us to get a group together that can push ourselves out of the ACC. And we're bringing voting rights in to two other schools that we don't know what they're going to want. They're going to want to keep the conference together, of course. And so, yeah, it doesn't make sense from that standpoint. I was a little surprised. I didn't know where NC State necessarily saw themselves as having a landing spot if the league falls apart, where they can go. But on the flip side, that Miami would vote, and again, whether this was an official vote or not, that Miami would vote Stanford and Cal in the league surprised me a bit. So those were the two votes that somewhat surprised me.
Miami surprised me a little bit too, because it sounds like they were on
Yeah,
the
that's
yes
what I'm
side.
saying. Miami.
Yeah. That surprised me a little bit. You kind of figure with Dan Radakovich's history at Clemson, his history with Graham Neff, maybe they'd kind of be seeing things along the same, in the same way. Apparently not. You think Miami be one of those teams that would be aligned with Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and those other, whoever wants out. Maybe that's not the case, but that is one that definitely surprised me a little bit.